Good afternoon again. My name is Robert Pezzella. I'm the School Safety Director for the Worcester Public Schools. And on behalf of the Superintendent, I want to welcome each and every one of you. I see children in here today. I see parents. I see administrators from the public schools. I see principals. I see community vendors that are here that are working in our schools every day. And it's great to see the diversity of people here because they know it's an important subject that we're going to be talking about today. And I also want to especially acknowledge our elected officials that are here today because they're the ones that make the legislation and make policy. And when it comes to issues such as what we're presenting this afternoon, they are very important in making sure that they address policy and elect our officials to where they're going to do the right thing as far as in the eyes of wanting to help our children relating to this topic. So I see that we have John Monfredo, school committee member in attendance, thank you. I see Laura Clancy from the school committee, thank you. I see City Councilor Kay Toomey from the City Council. Thank you for being here. The superintendent will be coming. Did I miss anybody from elected officials? Okay. I would like to call up a very special person who has been tremendous, and since he's been elected to office, in making substance use disorders treatment in this community, in his job, a tremendous priority. He's been instrumental, and I would like him to come up and say a few words. Our District Attorney, Joe Early.
Thanks, Rob. You got a lot of good people speaking tonight. I'm going to try and be brief. I want to thank Robert Pezzella for all that he does in the fight against opioids. He's a leader in that area, along with our superintendent, Maureen Benender, and our school committee and our council and our reps. We got a lot of good people working on this. We're in the biggest social crisis of our generation, the opioid crisis. Raise your hand if you know someone affected, a family affected by the opioid crisis. Raise your hand. That's 80, 90% of this room. To make matters worse, we know this, and I'm not trying to scare anyone any more than you're already scared. We have additional threats of cocaine and stimulants and methamphetamine on our borders. Some of it's coming in. There were over 70,000 opioid deaths in the country in 2018, including 283 in Worcester County. While opioid deaths were down 4% statewide, they continue to rise in Worcester County. We had 19 more deaths than we had the year before, and the city of Worcester accounted for most of that. But what they tell us when we go to the Prescription Drug Abuse and Heroin Summit every year is that you've got to take the best ideas, step out of your silos, and bring those ideas back to where you are. So I called my good friend Timmy Cruz, Republican, district attorney in Plymouth County, and me, a Democrat. I called my friend, the Republican. I said, what are you doing that's working? And he basically told me about a program where it's a law enforcement program. And each law enforcement, each police, city or town police force signs a memorandum of understanding. They track every overdose, fatal and non-fatal. Every non-fatal overdose gets a knock on the door within 24 to 48 hours. A plainclothes police officer and a recovery specialist. Their numbers went down 26%, while ours have gone up 26%. The hospitals let them know if the police or the EMTs are involved with an overdose, they let them know with a 2-word email, needs attention. If someone comes out without services, if someone accepts services, we leave it alone because the idea is to get them services. So after that visit, they found that 36% of the people who got knocks on the doors accepted treatment. They accepted treatment from people saying, we want to help you. No one got a door slammed in their face. We know about high-risk people who've been Narcan several times over the last couple of weeks. We bring the families into it as well so that they can know. But all of this data is collected in real time. There's a data intelligence expert at each police station. It's a drop-down thing. All of this stuff I'm paying $40,000 out of drug forfeiture money for. All of this stuff gets compiled, and everyone countywide knows if there was an overdose of one of their citizens in another town or city. For example, if Worcester had 100 overdoses, just an arbitrary number, 70% of those people we know would be from Worcester. 30% might be from Millbury, Leicester, Shrewsbury, Leominster. But we would then get in contact by an automatic email that's generated to let them know they're here. and we want to help you. So the biggest thing is stepping out of the silos. The biggest thing is not worrying about who gets the credit. There's plenty of credit to go around. Marijuana, I see my favorite senator here. Jen's on the marijuana board now, and it's probably one of the hardest jobs she's ever had. But she can tell you, as everyone can tell you, Dr. Volkoff from the NIH would tell you with Jen Flanagan that we basically told kids that it's okay to smoke pot. We basically have found out from all the people that are addicted that their gateway drug was pot. It put them in the arms of other drugs, amongst other definitions, but it put them into the arms of cocaine, it put them into the arms of the opioids. And basically we know that until a person is 25, their brain is still developing, and that regular marijuana use is a motivation killer, and an IQ killer, and it's irreversible. One of the other things that we've done, I'm real proud, Liz Haddad was out there, we're in the schools talking about the mixture of Xanax and alcohol. And it's a movie called If They Had Known. We have it, we're available. We've been into most of the middle schools and high schools. And, I'm sorry, I'll get the milk and bread. All right. But we also had the movie If They Had Known, a 35-minute documentary to talk about the dangerous mixture of two antidepressants, alcohol and Xanax, and how it had killed a nice young man out of Winchester High and in the pain that it brought upon their family. Now, I ran on a theme of prevention. That's one attempt at our office on prevention. It's also working with Rob in the schools. Another one is If They Had Only Known, and this is not about drugs, which is about teaching kids in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades about what happens when you ingest an opioid. How Vicodin, Percocet, morphine, and heroin all come from the same morphine molecule, and it allows them to make informed and responsible decisions for when they're at that party and someone offers them a pill. We started the Opioid Task Force in Central Mass. If anyone would like to become a member, there's really no commitment, but we're keeping you up to date with all the latest mailings, information. Liz Haddad's out there at our Hidden in Plain Sight display. Give her your email, and you can get on it. Now, as a parent, like you, we want to keep our kids informed. And one of the biggest ways we can fight this crisis, Dr. Volkoff, Nora Volkoff from the NIH has told us, if someone overdoses and goes to a hospital emergency room, they shouldn't be told that they're dirty, that they're disgusting, get the hell out of here, we don't ever want to see you again. Because this is a very complex disease of the brain. And these are our brothers and sisters, our parents, our nieces, our nephews, that do have this very complex disease of the brain. And if someone overdoses, goes to the hospital, and doesn't leave with a treatment plan in place, this is coming from a doctor, not a lawyer. It should be medical malpractice. And we've got to remember, when we remove the stigma, we open doors to treatment. When we fight this as a community, just as Rob Pezzella and the Worcester School Department are doing tonight, this is what makes us better, this is what makes us smarter, and this is how we will eventually win this biggest social problem of our generation. I've spoken too long. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Joe, especially for your commitment. I see that our superintendent came in a couple of minutes ago. So why are we here? If you saw the flyer that was circulating, I put on there a call to respond. And why I put that is because probably a little over a year ago, I approached the superintendent and I said, Maureen, I said, I got some concerns. I said, we all know, and I was preaching to the choir, her being a former principal, assistant principal, so she was been in the trenches for years and knows firsthand what it's like. I said, but I get some concerns because there's an increase in some of our students. Majority of our students are well-behaved, good students in our schools, good in the community, good children. But the ones that we are always concerned about, and we want to put a lot of our resources, is for those who need help. So I said, we just got some kids, I think, that are on the verge of going to a point where, there's some drugs of interest that are causing problems, and I think it's going to cause further problems. So I asked her if we could hire a drug counselor and teacher and start a special drug program to where we can have our students that are in need to, once they are in, whether it's possession or there is, concern from principals, administrators, and others that we feel this student needs help, then we would develop a very comprehensive special program for these students to where we can hopefully take a first step in helping them. So recently, after budget things were worked out, superintendent allowed me to hire the counselor and soon to be a teacher. So we're very proud and very thankful for the superintendent to allow us to do that. And so today, what I'd like to show you is a PowerPoint presentation, it won't be very long, and the concerns that I have, in addition to others in our school system, about what we feel is happening, that's a community problem. I want to stress a community problem. It's not the school's problem, it's not the district attorney's problem, it's not the police, it's not the legislature's problem, it's a community problem. And so, with the representation here today from diverse segments of the community, it's wonderful to see because we want to be able to be in this together, and especially when we're talking about drug prevention. What are we seeing in our schools? That's another thing why we're here today. Superintendent said, let's be transparent. We have to be transparent when it comes to these issues because when you're transparent and you put everything on the table, then you have a better chance of helping rather than depriving. What we're seeing in our schools right now is marijuana. That's the drug of choice that is being used by students. I won't say what grade level. Right now, you know, the spectrum is anywhere from young middle school up to high school. Vaping, which I'll talk about a little bit after this slide. Within vaping, there's both vaping for tobacco. Students are using vaping devices to smoke tobacco, and then recently, which caused me to be very concerned, as I said earlier, THC, marijuana and vaping devices. Edibles. Mike, are you around? Am I? Okay. Edibles. I'm going to have Commissioner Jen Flanagan come up in a couple seconds to talk because in my PowerPoint presentation, I have some slides on the marijuana law that was passed in 2016 and how, as a result of that, how that's going to intersect with our children in the community, hopefully not getting access to the legalized marijuana, but the influx that we're going to see of marijuana and edibles in our community. So she's been very instrumental when she was a former state senator to talk about and advocate for kids in a very positive way in regards to substance use. So she'll come up in a couple of minutes. But we're seeing an increase in edibles in our schools. With the district attorney left his phone. I'd be in big trouble if I didn't get that to him. And I will show you some of the edibles that students, teenagers, children have been using to where we want you as parents, and of course administrators and others who already saw some of this, to be aware of going forward. Opiates, I've been in this job for 22 years, and I am responsible under the superintendent to oversee the drugs that come into our schools and to accordingly eventually give it to police. And I can tell you that despite we're in an opiate epidemic right now, there's very little opiates that are being confiscated on school property to this day. The number one drug of choice in being confiscated and being used, and in some cases abused, is still marijuana, and of course alcohol, which I'm leaving over here for tonight, but definitely alcohol as well, but marijuana has more potency in some ways, which I'll tell you. How are they getting it? How are they accessing drugs, students, teenagers? Of course illegally. I mean, it's been going on for generations. Anyone can go up to a local drug dealer and purchase drugs. So we know that still exists. Online, there is now, although there's a lot of oversight from the Cannabis Control Commission in regards to making sure products are bought legally to where it's not getting into the hands of minors, there is still online purchase of marijuana edibles through various schemes in ways that they know how to falsely advertise it. Vaping devices. Believe it or not, there are some people who want to become drug dealers at a young age. They know what the thing is today, vaping with teenagers and students. So what are they doing? They're buying vaping devices and they're selling it to students in school, $1 a hit, okay? Tobacco stores. I have another slide I'll show you in a minute, but I'm sure all of you at one time or another have walked into a tobacco store, and what you get overwhelmed with as far as the vaping devices and the pipes and the bongs that they're selling, Now, and the commissioner will tell you, you're supposed to be 21, and we hope that they're doing the right thing, but this is also a way you can get access to these devices. Yep, this is one of the local tobacco shops that I walked into. I said, can I take a couple of pictures? He said, yeah. I said, okay, this is what you're walking into, all right? Okay, we are not here today, I am not here today to talk about adult use. We know it's legal, and we know if you're 21 or older, you have the right to purchase and smoke marijuana. However, it's all ties in to how we are going to be in this together to where we're going to make sure it doesn't get into the hands of minors. So with that, I would like to call up our cannabis, one of our commissioners, Jen Flanagan, who can give us, enlighten us a little bit more on this subject, and we'll go from there. Jen?
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. As the district attorney said, and as Officer Pezzella said, I am a former senator from Leominster. I am the public health appointee on the Cannabis Control Commission and was appointed by Governor Baker back in 2017 to really focus on the public health aspects of this, one of which being access for children and one of which being diversion to children. So when we talk a little bit about what the law was that we all went and voted on in November of 2016, we voted to legalize marijuana for adults. Just as alcohol is, just as tobacco is, we went and we all voted. It was a 53-46 vote. Having had my name on a ballot 7 times, this is not a good ratio of 53-46. So from what I hear from people is that while people wanted to approve it, they were kind of skeptical about the question. They weren't really sure what the question said. And how many people here actually read the 17-page question that was sent to you from Secretary of State Galvin before you voted? A couple of people. And so what many people have said to us across the state is that we don't know what we voted for. We thought the kid wasn't going to get arrested. We thought someone wasn't going to get in trouble. We thought that there would be some stores around the state, but we weren't sure what that looked like. We have cultivation sites, we have manufacturing stores, we have retail stores. They are going to come up around the state. And one of the biggest complaints you've probably heard is that we're not licensing fast enough. And I'm okay with that complaint because I think it's important that we take our time and we do it right. But with respect to that, one of the biggest concerns we have is that there are people who have been in the stores who buy because they're 21 years old, and as Rob said, they have gone out and they have sold to children. And so that's really where the partnership with the DA's office, the Cannabis Control Commission, your elected legislators really have to pay attention to what the nuances are as the law unfolds. What's the legal age to possess and use marijuana in Massachusetts? It's 21. However, we do have a medical program. You can be under 21 and have a medical card with a caregiver who is over 21. So you're not going to have a 14-year-old walk into a cannabis store buying their medicine, but they are allowed to enter the store with their caregiver. And all of that is registered in the database, which is then at the Cannabis Control Commission, so we can see how many patients are under the age of 21. We know who they are. We know what the conditions are that they have. And so we want to make sure that when we talk adult use, and I get very, very strict when I say to people, I don't want to hear recreational, because when you start saying recreational, kids think of that as fun. They have rec time, we have rec departments, we have recreation programs. When we talk about cannabis, we really try to talk about the adult use side, because as we've said, it is a 21 and over product. The one big thing to remember here, and actually this is interesting for parents of teenagers who are going to college, because cannabis is illegal at the federal level, if you're caught on a federal charge, you can lose your financial aid for 5 years. So if you have a student who's in that middle age group, you know, and they're under 21 and they get caught for whatever reason on a federal charge, and it's happened, I think there were 1,700 students that were caught on it last year, you lose your financial aid for 5 years. What do you think is going to happen in that 5 years? Are the kids going to be able to afford to attend college? Are the parents going to be able to pay for that child to go to the college? Or are they going to become completely derailed and not be able to have the future that we had all hoped for them? So it's important to understand that when we have the conversation about cannabis and people say, well, isn't it like alcohol? Isn't it like tobacco? It's not, because it's not federally legal. You cannot take it across the border. If you get caught across the border, then you have federal charges to deal with, not state charges. And that's why we say to people all the time, there are only 11 states in the country that have legal cannabis laws. You should not be taking them on planes. You should not be taking them on trains. And because we're here in Massachusetts, you're not even supposed to take them over to the islands off of Cape Cod because it's federal water and federal air space. So it has to stay on the mainland, and that's why some of the restrictions that we have means that the ones that are on the islands have to stay on the islands. But the federally illegal piece of this is really, really important for your children to understand because there are ramifications that come so much further than just today. If you're over 21, can you smoke marijuana or vape liquid THC in public? No, you can't. It's not. There's no public consumption. You probably heard that we have social consumption sites that are eventually going to come. They're not here. You're not supposed to be doing it on the sidewalk or in any kind of public place. You're supposed to be allowed to consume this in your home. You're not allowed to consume it in the vehicle, and we already have OUI laws on the books. So you can have an OUI for any kind of a substance, a sleeping aid, cannabis, alcohol, any kind of narcotic. You still can be stopped by the officers, and you would have to have what's called a DRE exam, which is a drug recognition expert exam, but it's still possible. We haven't forgotten about that part. Unfortunately, when ballot questions come to fruition, the laws don't always catch up as quickly as the ballot questions have to be enacted, and so that's kind of where we are right now. The governor has a bill on Beacon Hill that addresses the OUI legislation. How much marijuana can you have in your possession without violating? You can have an ounce on you or 10 ounces maximum at your home. One of the biggest mixed messages that I usually have a problem with here in Massachusetts is that we allow home grows. So we allow people to grow 2 plants at home, and if you have 2 adults, you can grow up to 4 plants. Sometimes children get confused in that it's legal for everybody, it's not a big deal. That's when I think parents have to really have a conversation with their children. If you're using this product, if you're growing this product at home, you have to sort of gauge the age of your child and their maturity level based on how you're going to lock it up. If you have a 3-year-old, chances are if you put it on top of the fridge, they may not get it, unless your child's into like that Ninja Warrior stuff. If you have a 13-year-old, chances are you want to lock it up. Because don't forget, we all know that these packages that are being sold in Massachusetts, we can tell where they come from. So we know where they're sold, we know where they started, they all have QR codings on the packages. And so we want to make sure that people understand having a conversation with your child, especially because some of this is really confusing to them. I have 2 stepsons, I have a niece in middle school. We went from it's illegal to now it's legal. And you have to have that conversation on how things change and what the expectations are. Are we making a big deal about teenagers experimenting with marijuana? Most of them grow out of it. We're not making a big deal about this because hopefully at some point you're having a conversation about alcohol in your house. Hopefully you're having a conversation about tobacco in your house. I can't imagine there's one family in America that did not have a conversation about vaping when we had all these people getting sick and we had 17-year-olds getting double lung transplants. So it's important to have conversations about cannabis because we think it's important that children are able to talk to you, they're able to talk to teachers, that they're able to have these conversations and to really understand. It's ironic that we really push your brain is developing until you're 25, but they're teenagers, they're using it, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. You're killing your brain cells. It is a big deal. You can totally derail whatever path you were on. Not for all children, not for all teenagers, but there are some, especially if they're susceptible to mental health or they're susceptible to other different conditions. Do you want to do this part? The one thing I will tell you, though, is that in your packets, you have 2 rack cards. One talks about the law, it's the blue one. One talks about the law of cannabis, and one talks about how to talk to your children about cannabis. Those are important rack cards because they will then bring you to the More About Marijuana public awareness campaign. The one thing I can share with you is that what Colorado said to us when we first became implemented in 2017 is that you've got to get out in front of the education. You have to start to educate parents. You have to start to educate children about what this is. And I think it's important to know that your legislators and your governor gave us $2 million in the onset to start the education in Massachusetts before we even licensed any facilities, because we thought it was that important, that public safety and public health was a major part of that. So I urge you to go on to moreaboutmarijuana.org, talk to your children. There's some really cheesy cartoons that are on there that we had to create, but I think it will actually get to the heart of the conversation, and hopefully you'll be able to talk to your students.
Thank you, Jen. Just want to acknowledge that school committee member Diana Biancheri is in attendance, and I believe City Councilor Donna Colorio is here. I think I saw her. So thank you very much. So I'm not here to argue tonight. When you see marijuana as a gateway drug, I can only tell you from my experience being involved in substance use disorders for over 30 years in various professions that I have seen many people starting off using marijuana and progressing because of the disease of addiction to other hardcore drugs, and then eventually to a life of opiates and other narcotics. So to me, for many, it is a gateway drug. For others, it's not. But it's a cause for concern because of what we're faced with today with the influx of marijuana in our community. Mary Ellen McGrory from the Recovery High School has a table here tonight. She's the principal of the Recovery High School. The Rockdale Recovery High School is one of 5 in the state. So they're none of the species of the public schools, but we contract with them. We send students to them, but it's for grades 9 to 12. And we can't mandate students go there. The referral has to come from the parent. So if you know of anybody grades 9 to 12, and you feel that he or she has a problem, if the parent refers, then an interview takes place with Mary Ellen, and then mutually the decision is made if that student's appropriate for Recovery High School. Am I correct, Mary Ellen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we all know, too, that eventually, because of the progression of the disease of addiction, yes, today kids are smoking pot, smoking a few joints, vaping a few devices, all right, eating a few edibles at the age of 16 years old, and then fast forward to the disease, the progression, at least to 3 things: jails, institutions, and fatal overdoses in a lot of cases, as we all know. Worcester, recent Department of Public Health statistics, I think the district attorney alluded to this, overdoses, fatal overdoses in particular, have gone up in the city of Worcester this past month. So we are facing not only a problem with some of our students and teenagers with vaping and edible use and abuse, but also the opiate epidemic, unfortunately, lives on. And of course, developmental delay. I'm not an expert to talk about that, but we all know if you're using drugs at the age of 12, 13, most likely as you get older, there's going to be problems, significant problems. Okay, marijuana edibles. I'm going to pass around. I want you to see firsthand what we have been seeing in our schools. I decided to make a homemade drug display case on things that we are confiscating in our schools. Once again, to be very transparent. It's right here. These are things that we've confiscated, and I'm letting the community know what they are.
So in this little packet of sweet and sour Fruit Loops, there's 200 milligrams of THC, so 10 Chewies, or whatever you want to call them, have 20 milligram pieces. In Massachusetts, we have a limit on our edibles of 5 milligrams a serving, and you can't have more than 20 servings in a package. And the package would have 2 different symbols on them, one being a triangle that has a marijuana leaf inside saying, includes THC, and the other one looks like a stop sign so that kids can identify it and sort of stop, don't touch it. These types of things can come online. These kids can get them online, they can have them sent here. Anything that comes out of the dispensaries that we license from the Cannabis Control Commission is not going to look like this because our regulations prohibit them from having colors that appeal to children. You can't have any kind of product that appeals to a child, so nothing can say Fruit Loops, nothing can say sweet and sour. You're not going to have sort of the neon type colors. Basically, what comes from our dispensaries in Massachusetts are very bland. It's very boring. It's not something that's going to appeal to any kind of child. If any kind of dispensary or licensee comes to us with this, they'll be denied. And the other thing too is that you're not allowed to create any kind of product that would appeal to children. We're not allowing the Rice Krispie treats. There's some concerns about the lollipops because cancer patients tend to prefer lollipops when they're going through their chemotherapy. And while they appeal to children, it's also a medical product for some people that are sick, so we don't want to deny them that. But we have very strong conversations about what we will approve and not approve for people who are looking to manufacture edibles, for them to look like, taste like, and be flavored with.
So, within the last year, we have seen at least 8 students who came into school, or someone gave them to them while they were in school, with edibles. And what's happening is that they're seeing, like, I could take one of these and I'll get high. But what happens is that with edibles, unlike if you were to smoke a joint, where you would get high pretty fast, there's a delayed impact with edibles. So a lot of our teenagers, children, are taking one, and then within 10, 15 minutes, there's no effect, so they're taking another one, or another one. And so what's happened right before our eyes is that few students, I'll tell you 8, have taken them to where they were rushed to the hospital. They had to go to the emergency room. This is just an article from UMass Memorial. They've seen already a few cases, including what I just told you about, of people that are being rushed to the hospital because they're overdosing, in other words, almost on the marijuana edibles, in some cases vaping. In the apple juice box? Yeah, in an apple juice box. How's that? Commissioner just told me an apple juice box. So, I mean, these are usually the symptoms that they're experiencing after they're in a state of panic because they took too much and they can't handle the impact from the edibles. Elevated heart rate, panic attacks, nauseous, lethargic, pale skin color, and hallucinations. Those are the typical symptoms that they have after. So what are we doing for penalties and support services? One student brought drugs to another student, sold it to this student. He sold it to 4 students. Those 4 students are the ones that ended up having to go to the emergency ward. He was arrested, and he should have been arrested. So yes, there are in some cases arrests in our schools, despite we don't want to arrest kids. Our arrests in schools have gone down tremendously the last 5 years. When it comes to something like this, where he knowingly brought in edibles, and they were bootleg, meaning they weren't legal, they were just bought online illegally, so they didn't know what they were eating, and that's what resulted in, of course, the adverse effects. He was arrested. As I was saying to you, when the superintendent said, let's go forward with this, with the hiring of a counselor and a teacher soon to be, we are starting up, and it's going to be more advertised, a drug program in the Worcester Public Schools. And any, as I started to say a few minutes ago, any kid that is in violation of our drug policy, any student that is even reeking of marijuana, you know, the smell that comes when students are coming to school, whether they're taking the coat from their home or they're smoking it on the way to school, you know how much that disturbs school climate. If a principal wants to send a student to this drug education program, that's their choice, and we'll accept those students. Rachel Sasseville is our drug counselor. She's in attendance today. She's doing a fantastic job already. We already started it. And then Mr. Tesai Murphy is going to be our teacher. He's going to be hired tomorrow. So we have a teacher and a counselor at this program, and our principals are already utilizing the program. Right now it's a 2-day program, soon to be a 5-day program. So it's an excellent thing that we're going to be starting up in our schools. I told you about the Drug Recovery High School. 3 years ago, the governor and the legislature, and you were in the legislature, that was your fault? Former Senator Flanagan had passed legislation that said that 2 grades in every school district in the Commonwealth would do what they call screening for students on drug use. And it's a tool called Screening and Brief Interventions and Referral to Treatment. And every year, I have the form down, a little bit down, but every year we picked 7th and 9th grades, and there's a screening by each school nurse and interviewing students on their drug use, or if they are in the home, or do they drive in a vehicle with people who are under the influence. So that screening tool has been very effective since we started it 2 years ago, and we hope that we can have some positive effect from some of the students who might have some issues with substances as a result of this tool. Well, you know, most of us already know, but what should you be looking for? If your son or daughter has all of a sudden no money, or they're telling you they're missing money, that's a sign. Could they be buying drugs? All of a sudden their friends pull up at their house, you never saw them before, that could be a red flag. Disinterest in school, poor attendance, dropping grades, we all know that, right? Bloodshot eyes, demeanor changes, mood swings. Like I just said, odor on clothing, they're coming home and there's a reeking of pot. I mean, those are all things as parents and educators in our schools we look out for to see if we can detect and then do something if they are under the influence and have some type of problem. More edibles. Now, this is something that was very rare. Very rare. This happened a few years ago where we confiscated this. You look at this stuff, it's pretty well put together. I mean, this is not ragweed. This is something that's very potent, as you can see, based on what you see here. So this is the stuff we're worried about. If students are bringing in this to school, then we most likely know they're there to sell. And those are the ones that will be dealt with accordingly. So this is what we're dealing with, vaping. And then they're finding the ways and means to hide the devices to where they're trying to fake out parents and school administration officials.
Yeah.
A vaping device
Put your lips right here.
hidden in plain sight.
It's really kind of difficult to tell the difference, especially when they're holding it in the palm of your hand.
Devices made to look like
Light up.
whiteout dispensers, USB drives, and even pens.
So, whatever vaping device, if you keep making it look cool, kids are going to keep using it because they get addicted quick. A lot of people are behind the curve. They want to know, and they're actively trying.
Because I'm a concerned parent and I want to know what's out there.
So this is the backpack.
We put parents to the test.
So we've got 6 items in this backpack that are vapes, and they're mixed in with other regular school supplies.
Can they tell the difference?
Maybe on the side.
Stephanie Adams works with at-risk students
It's the other one.
and has 2 kids of her
I
own.
mean, this does look, I don't smoke, so I don't know. But this looks like it could be used for a vaping device.
There's no time pressure.
Okay, it's gotta be one of these, I think.
Okay.
All right.
So that's 6.
Yes.
This one
Stephanie found 3 out of 6,
and that one.
overlooking 3 others.
And you would inhale it like that, and you can charge it through there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You didn't have any idea.
I didn't have any idea.
But like many parents, she missed one of the hardest to spot.
You said they could be in a watch, right?
Oh, yeah, they could be in a watch.
You mean like this one?
No way.
I push that button, release it,
Ah,
and that's a vape. Right there, that's where you put your mouth.
okay.
So you knew about this one.
I did.
And this one looks like a regular watch, doesn't it?
Right. This bothered me because I have kids and it's scary and I don't want them to try these things because of course, no parent wants their kids to get hurt or harm themselves, and having all these things accessible to them is scary because they can make those decisions with their friends or outside of it, and parents might never know.
What's the threat of it?
The threat of it is that it's cool enough, it's enticing enough for an adult and a child. So that doesn't incentivize, for people to take it off the market. A lot of people don't know what to do, and that's why we recommend that, not just knowing how to identify these products, but actually talking to your young people before they even start.
And more kids are starting. In the latest study of 19,000 kids, found 30% of high schoolers vape and 10% of middle schoolers do too. In Houston, Chris Costa, KHOU 11 News.
I'll move on from here, but this is what I was telling you a few minutes ago, what type of products out there for marijuana edibles, the late impact it has. The one thing that the commissioner was starting to say is that they have labels on their product that will tell you if it's legitimate, correct? And these are 2 of them right here.
Those are the only 2.
Excuse me?
The only 2.
The only 2, okay. So if you do, over the age of 21, walk into a store and purchase marijuana legally, edibles in particular, they will have those two labels on it, that it's a legitimate product, versus some of the product that we found in our schools is purchased illegally. In other words, on the black market. These are the ones that are in the marijuana facilities. Well packaged, well, nice product, chocolates, vaping devices, edibles, lozenges. So, it's almost ended. I want to tell you that we are trying our best. As I told you, we have a Superintendent's Drug Education Task Force. We're going to be starting up again. We started a couple of years ago. We had to do some things, and now we'll be looking at how we can further educate our children to make an impact. The Regional Worcester Health Survey you have in your packet, that's something that is very transparent. We wanted you to know that every year the Department of Public Health does a regional health survey. Regionally means Worcester and 6 other towns. We also do a Worcester health survey, which you have some of the results in there. And basically, what we're seeing is that, yes, the number one method of smoking marijuana today still is smoking. That's the number one. When you look down, you look at 15% blunt wrap, 12.5% ate in food. When you think about it, even though it's not a majority, it's still concerning. That 12.5% of grades 9 to 12 was the survey, that they're still using it in edible form, which is very concerning. And 11.4% vaporized in a portable device. That is very concerning. And like I said, I hope that the trend doesn't continue to go up. But we need to be prepared. And then when you look at 53.4% believe that there is no slight risk in harming oneself if they use marijuana. So that perception is still there. That marijuana, for most teenagers, they do not think it's a problem. To at least try it and use it, whether it's experimentally or socially in their eyes. .5% that used opioids. So we know that there are some teenagers using it, whether it's because of an injury that turns into addiction, and then they go onto heroin. But once again, we're not seeing that in our schools, thank God. As they get older, 18, 19, 20 years old, as you know, early 20s, you open up the obituary page today, and you're seeing, I just went to a wake of a 27-year-old former neighbor of mine who overdosed, fatally overdosed, 27. Good kid at one time, saw him grow up. Many of those things I see now, many, and I'm sure you do too. Your packet is much more descriptive. You can see this with marijuana as a constant. It's a constant throughout the last few years. This is the screening that they do for Expert, where they ask kids questions, students questions about their use. And I told you about the drug program we're starting, which is great for all of us, in more ways than one. Talked about Recovery High School. What else can we do? You know, I know in some cases, once again, I'm talking to people who are every day know this issue, but I really am concerned. I've been involved in the AIDS epidemic in the 80s professionally. I've been involved in the opiate epidemic in the 90s. All right, I've had jobs where I've gone into jails and have, worked with inmates on this issue. And here I am a little bit older, a few years later, and in my job as a school safety director, I will say to you, our schools are safe. They really are safe. But if that's the way we want to treat things, well, we're doing well overall. Then what good are we? What good would I do in my role if I just wanted to focus only on the positive? There are still many of us families that need help, and we need to hopefully be able to respond as best we can. So with that, I don't want to keep everybody here late. Dr. DeRita wants me to let you know, and we have the flyers up there, Jim? Yeah. Dr. Ruth Pody, correct? I don't know what I do with my glasses, I could be in trouble. Anyway, there is a presentation by Dr. Ruth Pody up at Anna Maria College. Jim, when is it? Why don't you get up and talk about it quickly?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, we have, I'm Jim DeRita from Anna Maria College, and we have secured some funding through the Reliant Foundation that helps us to educate community members and professionals around addiction. And Dr. Ruth Poti, who's pretty well known to most folks around here, I think, will be at Anna Maria College on March 19th at 4:30 in the afternoon. It's free, it's open to the public. She does an updated version of her presentation that includes the damaging effects of vaping, especially on youth. And so if you have an opportunity, please join us. There's a reception afterwards. Like I said, it's open to the community. There's no charge for it. So please feel free to join us. I have flyers that are out on the table. The only problem with them is when it says to register, click here, you can't. So go on the Anna Maria website and you can activate that link on there.